Welcome to the third and final tutorial for the track parser. Tips, tricks, and hacks. And we'll have a few errors as well. So what we're going to talk about today is some things to make your life easier so that any tediousness of placing waypoints and things like that can be dealt with a little bit, especially on trips that you're doing a lot of, and also some common mistakes. So let's start with some simple things. I've mentioned some of these in the previous tutorial, but just kind of glossed over them. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is when you download the smoothed track from the track parser and import that into the map so you can put your markers in. What I would suggest is to place both the smooth version of the track and the original version of the track. Now, the reason for that is the track parser will be working with the smooth version, and that's where you want to put your waypoints relative to those kinks in the smooth version. But the original version oftentimes will show your rest stops better. And I did this on the first one where we did our bicycle trip and I had a stop at the top of Whitehorse. You'll see when I toggle the original off, it's hard to figure out exactly where that rest stop was because the smooth version smoothed out that section. So by toggling that on, you can see where it is, and that allows you to get your waypoints either side of the rest stop. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is if you're doing trips regularly, I've started a map on CalTopo with my waypoints all in there. So here I have 2 bike trips that I've been doing since ski season stopped, and the track parser was using waypoints to find where to break up the legs. And these are 2 trips that I do pretty regularly. They're right near my home. And so what I've done is created this waypoints file. If I do the cliff run, which is over in this region, and I'll import both my smooth version and my original track into that. And I may adjust the waypoints or the markers a little bit to adjust for the start and the finish and to just make sure they're either side of a rest stop. And then I can just export the waypoints and I don't have to rebuild them each time. But when you export the waypoints, you can make an error. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to export, and you'll notice all the waypoints are highlighted to be exported. This won't work because the track parser will pick up all the waypoints and break up your leg. It's more likely to cause an error. The other thing that you'll notice is the folders are also highlighted, and the track parser cannot deal with the folders. So what you need to do is just uncheck and then just check the folder you want. So in this case, it would be the cliff waypoints. If I had done my Hurricane Black Cap, I would have done that. And now those are the only waypoints that are highlighted, and track parser will use only those to break up your trip into legs. So that allows you to not have to repeat your work. You can save a waypoints file, if you will, or a marker file in CalTopo or a marker map with various files of all your trips, and then just use the ones you want. I highly recommend that you import your track and your smooth track and just make sure, maybe tweak a couple of the markers, especially if there's rests, etc. All right then. So that's the second tip. Now, something that's really important and that can cause errors is when you're putting waypoints in, putting them out of order. In other words, you need to start at the start, end at the end of the first leg, go to the end of the second leg, and so on. If all of a sudden you're finished your third leg and you go, oh, I want a waypoint in between the end of the second leg and the end of the third leg, or the start of the third leg and the end of the third leg, make an extra leg. You can't just add a waypoint there, because when CalTopo exports them, they export your waypoints in the order in which you place them. So what you would have to do is move your third waypoint back and then add a new third waypoint. So you can't go out of sequence. Now, because of that, there may be times where you want to add a waypoint or subtract a waypoint. Now, subtracting waypoints won't be a problem, but adding waypoints will be. So if you preempt that, and what you'll notice here on one of my typical, I ride up this road. It's called Hurricane Mountain Road. It's quite a steep road. I like to get a good time on it. It's consistent because it's paved. So what I like to do occasionally is get an idea about the halfway point. So what I've done is I've placed a waypoint at the halfway, and I don't include it all the time. Most of the time I don't. It's only if I'm curious, like if there was a big discrepancy between the first half of the road and the second half of the road. It's mainly for training purposes. So what I'll do is when I export this, and I first uncheck them all, and then I'll check my hurricane, you'll notice the halfway I did in all caps. And the reason for that is just so I can find it really easily. And if I don't want it, I just toggle it off. And then the waypoint file is downloaded without that, and I don't get the halfway, I don't get the that first leg broken up into two instead of having it just one leg. Now, if you strategically place waypoints kind of in between that you think you might want to use, that's great. Make sure you know exactly where they are, because remember, they got to stay in order. And so you can utilize them. In the second tutorial, I did a little trip on Forbidden, and if you remember, we started from the upper camp and went all the way to the base of Forbidden. But in that track, there was a little rest zone there. And you may want to segregate that out at some point, or segregate it out later if you didn't want to segregate it out right away. So what you can do is just add 2 extra waypoints kind of off to the side. And again, I used all caps. And then you can decide later if you want to rerun your track and get that rest, or just figure out exactly how long. So the bottom line is add your waypoints beforehand and in order. So that way you can always remove them, but you can't add them after you've created your waypoint file. So that's a really important tip, I feel, and it's also something that causes errors when people try to add extra waypoints after the fact. When you use Track Parser, if you generate an error, let's say you choose a file and let's see, I won't get an error right away here. I'll upload that. Let me click my waypoints and I'll use that one. And if you get an error, you'll come to this page. This page is pretty self-explanatory, But I want to just run through it here real quickly so that way you understand what's going on. If you get to this page, when you hit the first upload, chances are the reason that happened was because your GPX, KML, or JSON file doesn't have all the data that's required by the track parser. For instance, I mentioned this earlier, the free version of Strava. If you use their GPX file, you'll immediately get this error. If you get to this page, you won't always get the error right here. I should reiterate. But you will get this error sometimes on the second go round when you're trying to add your waypoint file. If everything's working fine and you add your waypoint file, what you need to do is consider, and you come to this, did you get your waypoints out of order? Because if they are, the track parser tries to go backwards in time. And what that does is it creates some problems with some of the division and some of the indexing in the program. And it comes to this. If neither one of those is likely, or you've tried to fix it and it won't, what I would really like you to do as a beta tester is to click on my email address and just send me both your waypoint file that you used, if you got that far, and your track. Just not necessarily the smooth one, just the track. And what I will do is I will run it through the program so I can see better where the errors are and see if I have to either fix the program or tweak it, or let you know why the problem occurred and maybe fix the waypoint and I'll send you the data and tell you what the problem was. I'm very interested in any errors, so I just need your data so I can recreate the error. Thank you very much for beta testing. This is going to help me a lot in developing this program. I have some ideas already for how to make this better. And I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to give you one last tip, kind of as a PS. If you're repeating trips a lot, what you can do is, so let me go back a little bit. I repeat my cliff bike ride a lot. And so I've done it 3 or 4 times already this year after ski season. And so what I've done is I've imported the data files from all my runs up to this point, 3 or 4. And now when I click on the line in CalTopo, I have leg 6 from all these 3 trips that I did. So on May 2nd, my time for that leg was 8:50. On May 6th, it was 9:16. And on the 18th, it was 9 minutes. So I can start seeing if I'm improving in my speed, where I'm improving the most, what part of the trip I'm improving. And I can click any of the legs and get all 3 data sets. Unfortunately, it's sort of random. They won't come up in the order in which they're dated. So like here, the May 2nd is first, and then it's the 18th, and then it's the 6th. That's a CalTopo detail that I am not capable of working with at this point. So, but it'll allow you to compare. One of the things I want to do with Track Parser is make it easier to compare legs that you've done over and over again so you can see progress. And I want to be able to index it based on the time it took you to do it, or the date you did it, or the day or the temperature that day. In other words, from coolest to hottest and then see how your time was, or from fastest to slowest, or from this date, from the earliest date to the latest date. That's where I'd like to go with Track Parser. Just get it so it's in a database like that. It's going to take me a little while to build it out, and I'm going to need to see some interest from both the beta testers and from the general public to see if this is something worth pursuing. Anyway, I really hope you enjoy the Track Parser, and thanks again.